Hello, and welcome to The Mind of a Therapist, a podcast where I interview psychotherapists and helping professionals and what they're passionate about in order to provide you with messages of encouragement and hope. I'm your host, Andrew Earle. The Mind of a Therapist is sponsored by Psychological Counseling Services, healing hearts and transforming lives. Look into our intensive at pcsearle.com. In today's interview, I interview Nicole Smith Levay. Nicole is a professional dancer turned energy coach. She integrates somatic therapies, breathwork, and meditation into her work with people struggling with anxiety and depression. Using body-centered techniques, Nicole takes a forward-thinking approach to mental health and trauma-informed care. She holds a master's in Somatic Psychology from the California Institute of Integral Studies and is a well-known workshop facilitator, having hosted wellness retreats around the world. Since founding her practice, Power Within Healing, in 2013, Nicole's helped hundreds of people overcome their energetic blocks in order to step into their power and live out their purpose. So without further ado, here's my interview with Nicole. Let's get going. Nicole, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for taking the time to be on. The question I like to pose at the beginning of the podcast generally is how do you view change? What does it take for someone to change, for systems to change? What's your take on change?
Thank you so much for having me, Andrew. I love the podcast and beautiful question to start with. Change for me is a gradual and titrated process. So I feel like it's a dance of, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and really allowing yourself to kind of like test both sides of things sometimes, to find truly like a middle ground, a sense of oneness for you around things. I think it's that whole metaphor of dipping the toe in, then dipping your foot in, then maybe sitting, getting used to the cold in your legs first before you totally dive in. I believe that's the only real way to sustainable change is slow and steady with, a healthy dose of courage, compassion, and patience in the process.
I like that imagery of dipping the toe in and taking it slow because, change from my experience is a process. And with the model that I've been really interested in lately, internal family systems, we just make sure that it's a process, it's a process of like getting to know the parts of ourselves, making sure that they're okay and ready to let go of burdens and make shifts. So I agree with what you're saying there.
I love parts work, like, just addressing, the pieces that maybe don't feel as expressed or more shut down, and like bringing them online and seeing like how much more energy that gives us in the process of change as well. I think, like we cope, our bodies and our minds cope so intelligently to the stressors and triggers and traumas of our lives. And so, I don't know. I think we're blessed as therapists, healers, facilitators to be able to hold that space for that truth in people's processes and, gently nudge and challenge that gradual shift.
Yeah, and it's so true. A lot of it is amazing the coping strategies that our protective parts develop to respond to trauma, to respond to pain. And the sad thing is that those parts often get exiled and, we don't have as much access to them. And so, what Kurt, you said courage. It's such a courageous process to take that little step at a time to reconnect with those parts of us that have been exiled, maybe by our family members, maybe by our spouse, maybe societally. That's nice. You have a background in dancing. I'm excited
Yeah.
to talk a bit about that. I'm not very familiar with the dancing world. Will you share a bit about that background in dance?
Sure. Yes. And my own healing process definitely starts with those exiled parts,
Mm.
how I kind of contributed to the exile and blaming those parts too, criticizing those parts of myself as problematic, maybe other people's voices as well, but contributing. So, grew up a very talented mover,
Mm.
and was sort of escorted into technical dancing. Like this could be your line of profession. Of course, moving gives most people joy, so it was fun, fun for a long time. Um, in my teen years, I actually stumbled upon a class where I don't know if the teacher didn't have enough plan for the class or what, but it was the first time I had done freeform dance. And she just said basically, like, for the next 2 or 3 minutes, it was a song I loved. I think it was like a Dave Matthews song or something. She was like, for the next 2 or 3 minutes, there are no rules. There's no right way to move. I am not watching. We're going to dim the lights, move however you want. And it was in that moment that I think I had my first like meditative experience, as
Wow.
well as like feeling of like integration, I would say, like where those parts of me that felt like they were at odds or conflicted, like I felt like I didn't have the word for it then, but looking back, I was very fragmented and felt pulled in so many directions by other people's expectations and my own, as many teens do. But I was like, hey, there's something here. And I did go on to have a professional dance career until an undiagnosed disability. My legs are actually different lengths. So it's kind of a miracle that I got to the point that I did. I was in a childhood car accident. I didn't know
Oh.
that my bones wouldn't grow to be the same length. So I thought all this physical pain and trauma was because of something I was doing in my training, but really my one leg is about 14 to 15 millimeters shorter than the other. And I need to wear special lifts under the one shoe. So that's what transitioned me from more performative dance to conscious dance, somatics, first through movement. And then after, getting certified in yoga and breath work and meditation, I was like very hungry to understand how and why these practices work.
Mm.
Like the nerdy part of me it wasn't enough that it just worked. And I saw that it was working for the classes I was teaching and things and the private sessions I was having. I really wanted to understand the nervous system more. I wanted to understand the impact of big and little t trauma. I didn't know that it was called that then, on your nervous system, and what your nervous system had to do with anxiety, depression, very common things I was seeing in, my first few years of teaching wellness practices in other folks besides my own. And so, yeah, so that was kind of,
Mm.
that's the whole path. And now it's all like a part of it, because I realized in the past 2 years that I can have my own sort of artistic practice choreographing and moving for me if I wear my special shoes. I'd
Mm.
only ever dance barefoot. So it's cool because it's come really full circle. Like I'm able to help others, and I'm able to keep a piece of that still feels good for me now.
Oh, that's nice. And
Yeah.
will you say more about that experience of, you said, uh, the parts of you are fragmented, and then in that free, what was the term, freestyle or
Yeah, free form dance.
free form
Yeah,
dance?
more like improvisation. Yeah.
Yeah. Will you share more about that experience of free form,
Yes.
what that was like, why it was so powerful for you?
Yes. Yes. Um So it's really, how like in parts work, you're giving the parts voice. In that improvisation, I was giving those parts embodiment, really.
Mm.
Like I was really living like the part that like felt controlled, or the part that needed to control something. And um I mean, I know it's maybe if you're not familiar with dance, that's a little bit out there, but basically the art of dance is like taking imagery and emotions and like putting it into a little movement. It's like just like we would craft a sentence. Each sentence has a few words. In dance, it's like every movement is a word, and then that makes a sentence. So in that free form movement, I was really just allowing myself to feel the anxious part, or the part that wants to collapse, or the part that is feeling controlled or actually is trying to control. And I think it's not that far removed from when we're sitting in a session with someone and we're carefully tracking our own body as well as what we're witnessing in this other human being sitting across from us, right? Like, we all, for the most part, gesture, some more than others, and also our posture shifts and changes according to, like, from the top down, what we're thinking and feeling and how that affects our breath. So it's kind of cool, because where these worlds have met for me now is like in the dancing I create and make now, it's actually pretty simplistic, and it's like just examining the way that humans like sit and walk and breathe and gesture, and it's really cool and an honest exploration for myself as well.
Yeah. Well, thanks for connecting that for me, because I hadn't, I held those two ideas separate, that we do a lot of our communication non-verbally with our bodies,
Right.
and that dance is such a beautiful expression of emotion, of that imagery and internal world. But I hadn't really connected. I mean, that makes complete sense, that it serves as dance can serve us in movement, can serve as such a powerful way for those parts of us to express themselves.
Be more fully expressed. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that was like my first semester at California Institute of Integral Studies, Don Hanlon Johnson's class. He has you try to find the words, because so many folks come and they're like, there are no words to describe like this, like, we go into movement because there are no words to describe it. And his whole thing is about, like, slowing it down to give it that imagery or that description, or even if it's just one word of a sensation or a temperature or something. So it was a really that class was a great bridge for me of, like, how do I shift from someone who was more intellectually an art maker and then became experientially, like, you would say, a wellness professional or a healer, but I didn't really connect the dots. And I think his course really helped me empower other people to put words to their nonverbal experiences. When you said that, I noticed there was a shift in your posture, what's going on in your body right now. And just to bring someone back to that present moment, it can be confronting, and they may feel distracted and move on to the next thing. But if I do that week after week, then suddenly there's like okay, well, my jaw was clenching. I noticed my heart started racing. So then I did this. Now some connections are made between the ways that we kind of don't let those trauma cycles complete on their own. We don't give them space to complete on their own because we've moved on to something else. So
Yeah. Well, and will you share a bit more about you went from the dance world to yoga, breath work, and then this intellectual part of you just wanted to learn more about the science behind these somatic practices and why they work. Will you share a bit for those who aren't as familiar with somatic psychology and the science behind that connection between our body and mind and trauma response with our physiology?
Absolutely. I would love to. So yes, I think it's best summarized probably by people who came before me, like Martha Graham, the famous modern dance pioneer, the body doesn't lie. And then Bessel van der Kolk, the body keeps the score. So yeah, I just wondered if there was in kind of psychoeducation, there'd be more self-agency for folks to realize what's happening within their own body and make different choices to support themselves, or we would say resource themselves, and how we could kind of co-create and co-regulate, facilitate that in sessions as practitioners as well. So basically, I guess think about it this way. If you're familiar with like a predator and prey, we are animals at a base level. Of course, we have highly developed minds, brains, prefrontal cortex that allow us to make decisions and different things that other animals conceptualize. Other animals may not have that, or maybe they do. We just don't know it yet. But basically, the point being, if we're feeling threatened, just like a prey would, we're going to have very few options of what's available to us in this moment of like threat, of particularly what feels life or death. I mean, if you want to put words to it and make it less complex. So, the predator is coming after the animal may freeze and play dead. It may, fight. It has some coping mechanisms to make themselves more defensive and try to scare away. Flight, it may run as fast as possible away. Also, fawn is another coping mechanism, but maybe not seen as much in the animal world. It's, I think, more of like a humanistic way of, an emotional response to an attack or a threat. So when we take that whole imagery and we place it in our human body and our histories, it's like in the film of our lives, in like the movie of our lives, there are these scenes and moments in time that became like frozen in our tissues. And one of the tenets of somatics is the issues are in the tissues. Now, there's all different modalities and techniques to gently access that moment frozen in time in your body. It may be frozen with a set of gestures and postures, ways that you carried yourself or froze yourself to get through it. And it may also be attributed to states of thought and rates of breathing and rates of heartbeat. And it kind of all creates this little prism, this little energetic knot that can be held in different parts of the body. So a very long-winded way of saying, in my work I do now, I kind of combine the philosophy of somatics with a lot of the energy healing practices that I found to go directly to the root, to the source. And because I understand trauma sensitive care, not just like totally drop a bomb on that root and try to break it up, but instead, like we were talking about, dip the toe in, dip the ankle, then the legs, introduce people first to a 2-minute breathing pattern. Encourage once a week practice where you do a 30 or 40-minute practice to clear some things out, to shift some stuck energy. And what's interesting in my work now is we don't do as much processing as maybe I was trained at school to do verbally. There's definitely like a way that I use talk therapy to process and get clear on what are we focusing on, and then the breath really does the rest. The breath in the body does the rest, and then we kind of come out of it. I give them some space to get clear on it, but often so much of the story gets out of the way. when we go right to it with the breath and the energy work. And that can be helpful, especially for me. I'm really great at like following stories and like repeating things back to people. And I feel like I could swirl up in that area and it doesn't ever drop in and down. So many therapists are. It was kind of like we grew up that way in our family systems and everything. So I do like that it like helps me interrupt my natural pattern of helping too, and just like help people get the results they're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you so much for that explanation of how that, yeah, the energy can just get emotional energy just gets stuck in time, and it works so well with like the internal family systems understanding of like those exiled parts. So those are like younger parts of us that experience pain and hurt and get stuck in that time. So not only are they like stuck there psychologically for us, but like our bodies carry that stuckness as well.
Yeah.
And will you talk a bit about, you talked about being trauma informed, and for those who are somatic therapists or clients who are getting into somatic work, or just anyone who's getting in touch with their body for the first time, who's had some level of trauma, which I think on some level we all have had, small t trauma, hurt and pain. What are some of those considerations as you're starting to tune into your body, or you're starting to walk a client into tuning into their body?
Sure. I'm going to try to circle back to something else. We'll see how effective I am
Oh,
at that.
sounds good. Yeah.
No, yeah, I was like totally on to where you were going with that. And then, yeah. So I guess basic tenets are first like consent and self-agency. So like everything is by invitation. You are your own best therapist, best yoga teacher, best meditation teacher. Like if something feels off and this time you feel very conflicted going into it, like just observe and like or elect out of it. Like choice is a big part of it, because so many times in trauma choice was removed. um Also, yes, gradual, slow and steady wins the race. There is no, I mean, there really isn't a race to be won, but it often feels that way in the healing process, because
You want to
it's
get rid of the pain.
you want to get rid of the
Yeah,
pain.
this is
Yeah, no,
uncomfortable.
it's uncomfortable. No one wants to sit with the discomfort. So actually, like, I love mindfulness meditation and Buddhism philosophy. I had trouble just sitting and breathing. So that's why I learned and found that some of these more active techniques were easier for my very sort of active, disorganized self. But as far as other trauma informed considerations, yes, consent, safety, opting out, uh, yeah, finding different ways to ground yourself through activation as well. That's, I don't know, I guess that's more trauma informed than trauma sensitive. Is, we're not trying to avoid the trigger. Actually, the the reason why the pain recurs is because it's like it's that old first image. Like it keeps replaying in your life in various forms with various people, hoping that this will be the time. I mean, and this is more spiritual, say, coaching, but that's my belief of it. Like Pema Chodron, nothing goes away until it's taught us what we need to know. So we're not trying to avoid all triggers always. At the same time, when activated, knowing different coping strategies, I will say, to remain present, to the ability that you can to tolerate things shifting. So I often will teach grounding, orienting, and centering basics to my private clients, but also, folks that join my virtual studio platform. I usually begin every practice with like, let's come here now. Let's be honest about what we can process here now. So we use our eyes, we use our feet and our relationship to the chair or floor. And then gradually you can come more into yourself and feel that deep breath. But often going to the deep breath right away can, especially if you're very activated, can feel like this isn't going to last very long. I'm going to go right back to where I was. And I do see that in trauma work. It is, it's both powerful, but it also is very slow going into like understanding your own way of how you handled things and what ways are maybe more up for change now.
Yeah. Well, those are so important, that taking it slow, getting permission, that's so key. If there's a part of you that's screaming at you, don't go there. It's good to listen to that part. Get to know what its concerns are, and yeah, you don't have to go right into getting in touch with that part that experienced trauma. It's good to take it at that pace and listen to your whole body, get to know your whole internal system as you're moving towards that trauma. I wanted to make sure we circle back to the note you made, the piece that you were
I
wanting
think I
to
got it in
or
there.
maybe you did.
It was about the, I know. I'm quite impressed with myself now.
I'm impressed. That was good.
Like, I don't have a lot of experience on podcasts, but I was like, I want to try to work on this one skill in this interview. So thank you for your slowness and pacing, because it allowed my brain to weave that back together. But yeah, just basically that we aren't avoiding the trigger, because that's actually oftentimes where there's some movement possible. And like getting to know the edges of it, like you said, that you have choice to how far you go into this today and or ever, but knowing that often we either trauma makes us feel like, well, if we just plunge right into it and talk all about it and get really activated and like hysterical and historical about the whole thing, I don't know, maybe it'll help this time, and we don't know when to stop the flooding. Or opposite, it's like, oh, it's happening, I'm going to run away and let's do something else, So in all these practices, it's like, let's like get to know the edges of it. That's why I feel anything involving art, whether it's like drawing about it, writing a poem about it, moving, making some shapes with your body. It's like you're just kind of getting the sketch of the outside of the thing before you plunge all the way in. And maybe you never plunge all the way in. You kind of just like gradually chip away. And then some moment comes where it's like, okay. And that is holding less weight and energy in me now. And it affects how I speak and relate and, move forward in my life.
Yeah, and it's actually bringing to mind a story I heard recently of a person who consulted a somatic therapist. And I think it was their first time in therapy, and it ended up not being a helpful experience for them, because I think my understanding was they went into that intense trauma pretty fast, and it was kind of re-traumatizing to them.
Right.
What you're sharing of taking it slow, expression through what feels safe for that person. Maybe that's art, maybe that's dance, something that's artistic, drawing. Anything else that you'd want to share on that safety piece?
Yeah, I love that idea. I mean, like, I think parts work does this in some way. I mean, I only know parts work very briefly from school. I never got certified, but yeah, just something about like externalizing that piece and getting to know it more gradually, I feel like is hugely helpful. Giving it a name, giving it color, giving it texture, giving it an age, like any and all of those things help us approach something that, yes, can just totally be all consuming. And, I often find that like the older that frozen moment is, it does take like longer to rewind back to that. And I mean, this is just my belief, like nobody taught me that, but and even in my own healing process, some of those older things that we've lodged so deeply into our unconscious or subconscious, it's going to take a while to unwind the other things that have happened since then and like made different imprints around, well, this is how it is, especially relational trauma. So, just be gentle with yourself and give yourself credit through the whole process of like, first off, showing up for therapy is huge in itself.
Yeah.
Then being able to admit that, some of this was not right, and I haven't told anyone about this, or I haven't given this voice. And then to be able to explore it, like it may take several years, but through that process, you are shifting. And then you look back and you're like, wow, I am like so not the same person I was 3 years ago or 4 years ago.
Yeah. I love that piece of slowing down and acknowledging the steps we make. Because Michael White and David Epstein wrote, it's not the size of the step that counts, but the direction, and like,
I love
are we
that.
moving in, acknowledging the movements in different directions in our lives. And it's powerful to take the time and to reflect on that. I'm curious if you'd be able to share with our listeners a basic technique. Maybe you could walk us through some movement, some basic body somatic exercise.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll do a combination of both. So, yeah, another part of trauma informed care is just kind of letting folks know what is about to happen.
Yeah.
Especially those of us that are hyper vigilant, it's just like, oh no, all alarms are going off. What's going to happen now? This is new. So here's what I'm imagining. We'll do some grounding, orienting, and centering just with your, environment. Obviously, if you're driving, it's a little different. You would not close your eyes, of course, but you can ground, orient, and center while driving. I often find it useful to do it then. And then I'll offer a pranayama or a breath work, an active breathing technique that is down regulating. So, also, I guess if you're feeling kind of stuck, it can lift your mood a little bit as well. So whether you're feeling a little anxious or a little down, I think that'll help. So is like 5 minutes. Do we have that amount of time? That's
We've
good.
got that. That sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
excited.
Okay. Good. So wherever you are, start with just paying attention to the outermost layer of your body. Whether that's your clothes touching your skin, or your body touching the chair, or even if you're standing, your feet touching the floor. So we're just kind of like working our way in. So just noticing that for now. And as you notice those pieces, just see how the space between your thoughts perhaps is slowing down just a little bit. Like, what do my pants feel like against my legs? How does the back support and hold my chair? How does the chair support my back? How do I experience the floor through my feet? And then if your eyes are still open, I'm assuming most are, you can also just, keep that sensation of grounding to the present moment in your physical body. And you could take whatever hand, if you're driving, obviously it's going to be holding the steering wheel, but also bring your hands into this too. So you can have your hands touch your own heart, touch your thighs, just kind of grounding, using the sensitivity in your hands to really get that last step of like, this is my body. And in this moment, I feel safe enough in my body. And of course, again, if you're driving, keep your eyes open. Everyone else starting to just really take in your space. See what you see Or if your eyes are already closed, notice the changes in light behind your eyelids. Especially good as you're driving to, of course, pay attention to everything that's going on. And also, just broaden your eyes to take in a lot and like soften your gaze so it's not so, not so focused very strongly right there, but a little softer. And after you take in your space, noticing anything that brings you some pleasure or at least like a neutral feeling, something you might love or something that feels nice. And you just breathe into that now, just staying with that for a moment. Maybe it's the trees you're seeing or your favorite book or a picture of a loved one on your desk. And then if you're able to close your eyes, you can for a moment. Notice what it's like to really orient to yourself, calming and centering. Now I'll invite you to take a deep breath down into the belly. So as you inhale through your nose, imagine you're filling your belly like a balloon with breath. And exhale, really draw the navel in and empty the air out of that balloon. You can do that out through the nose or mouth 2 more times. Inhale. Exhale. One more time. And exhale. Good. And any other tension you might feel, you could just like shake it out now. So the breathing pattern, I actually will do this one driving sometimes because you don't have to have your eyes closed. But it's called Sitali Pranayam, and it's a cooling breath. Not everyone can roll their tongue like a hot dog bun. But even if your tongue doesn't do that, you can imagine your tongue doing that, and the meditation is just as effective. So eyes can be closed or softly focused at one point, and you will stick your tongue out like a hot dog bun, and you'll actually inhale with your tongue sticking out, almost like you're sipping through a straw. Good. And then you'll draw your tongue in, close your lips, relax your jaw, and exhale out warm air out through your nose. Okay, we'll do that just about 10 more times. Good. And continue on your own. Normal that the mind might bounce around. So you could just tell yourself, inhale, I am inhaling. And then as you're exhaling, exhale, I am exhaling. Good. And maybe last 2. Good. And if you're driving, you can just inhale, shrug your shoulders up towards your ears. Exhale, let it go. And those of us that aren't driving, we can also reach our arms up in the air, hands up. Good. Stretch, stretch, stretch. And exhale, drop those arms. Good. And just shake it out. Yeah, that's it.
Wow. Well, thanks for that, Nicole. That was a real gift for me today. The middle of the work day to yeah, just be able to take those breaths. And I always notice, I don't always, but often I notice for me, when I tune into the body, there is tension in my shoulders and neck area, and it's amazing. The doing a practice like that is just, I have a lot more ease now, and a lot of that tension has dissipated. I appreciate it.
Good. Yeah, no, it is a lifesaver in moments where, you have 5 minutes to turn it around.
Yeah.
I have a toddler. I have a son, and he's a
Oh,
toddler, and I often say, "Can we turn this around?" Because he's very much in the everything is flooding, and it's like, oh, and I reminding him to like look at me or take a deep breath doesn't really work. So I love to say, can we turn this around? So now he says it. If he sees that I'm agitated at any point, Mom, turn it around.
nice.
So
Kids are great mirrors, aren't they? Yeah.
yes, it's nice to have my own mini therapist. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, before I ask you the last question I generally ask guests, is there anything else floating around in your mind that you want to share?
Yeah, just giving people permission to take care of themselves. I talk a lot about healing for the healer. Actually, in my upcoming retreat, I'm offering it's included in the investment for the retreat, this 20-hour continuing education program called Healing for the Healer, because I do find there is that compassion fatigue and burnout, no matter how much of a boundary, wizard you may feel you are. There's a lot of countertransference that's happening in our energetic bodies, those mirror neurons. We're empathizing, even if it's virtual. We're feeling it in ourselves. So just like remember that our work is never done too, and that's okay, and that's a beautiful thing. And circling back around to things that maybe we thought, oh yeah, that's I've worked through that. It's actually quite a gift. I feel like to it. I don't see things as linear. I see them as like spirals of
Mm,
becoming. So
yeah.
just be kind to yourself, because the world needs you. The world
Mm,
needs helpers and healers and therapists of all kinds. So, please take care of yourself so that you can do this for the long haul.
yeah. Oh, that's so important, and it made me think of Gabor Mate, one of the
Mm-hmm.
leaders in the addiction field. He's been on a number of podcasts recently and talked about this story of um, experience he had with some shamans. He was going to a conference, and they were there as well, and he was the leader of the conference, and the shamans quickly told him that he had too much negative energy, that it was really going to get in the way of the healing space that needed to be created for that group. And he basically spent the the conference with one of them just doing healing work, and he talks about how profound that was. But I just appreciate his honesty and humility in that, because yeah, he's one of the big figures in our field, and he's continuing to be honest about his traumatic experiences and the effects that's had in his life and his work, and how it's a journey for him. We're all on this journey together, and it's
Yeah, a
okay to not
hundred
be
percent.
perfect.
100% more than okay. And yeah, I think that the veils of illusion are coming down around that. Some folks, have like ascended to some level of enlightenment that I honestly think they're probably, most of them are doing even more intense work to hold the size, magnification of space that they do hold. So yeah, I don't feel like there's any shame in that at all. Like, take care of yourself. And yeah.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up here, could you share with the listeners how to get in touch with you, or any resources, anything you have coming up that you'd like the listeners to know about?
100%. Yes. I am at Nicole Smith Levay on Instagram and Facebook, which you can see the spelling of, I'm sure, somewhere on here. And that's where like there's more regular posting happening and offerings. Complimentary things come up every couple months or so. But for your listeners, I wanted to offer a free month to my virtual studio platform for breathwork and meditation. It's actually called Soul Fitness Society. And like, what would it be like to have a gym membership but for your soul? And we
That's
do a
cool.
lot of this work. Yeah. So I'm happy to offer a free month. If you go to the link in the show notes here, and then you use coupon code RELAX NOW. It's like one of my favorite songs, Relax Now.
Nice.
That will get you the free month. So
Perfect. And I'll link all that in the show notes so people have that available. I think you kind of touched on this question, the answer to this question in talking earlier, but the question I like to pose at the end is what's a message of hope that you'd like to leave the listener with?
I think the message of hope is you're never alone. There are unseen, I believe, forces and guides and reminders and messages all around us, even if you're physically alone. And also, like release the shame and needing to be perfect. Like we all need that support from each other. And please open up to a loved one, because it's more magic than you can realize when you do that. So.
Oh, that's great. Nicole, thanks so much for being on the podcast today. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. This was excellent. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Please press the subscribe button, as well as rating and reviewing our podcast. This helps others connect with what you've been hearing. If you have any questions, please contact us at themindofatherapist@gmail.com. These questions will be kept anonymous. I want to thank Eric Price for the wonderful music you hear in this podcast. Additionally, this podcast was created to provide accurate and authoritative information on the subject matter. Although we are interviewing licensed therapists, they are not your therapists. This podcast is not intended to serve as direct medical advice and should not be used as a substitute for direct professional help. It is given with understanding that neither the host, publisher, guests, or PCS are rendering legal, clinical, or other professional information. If you need a professional, we encourage you to find one. Visit Psychology Today to connect with a licensed clinician near you.